Walking on the streets of the West District, there were not many pedestrians coming and going. Most of the big businessmen and small nobles traveled in horse-drawn carriages. The real pedestrians were usually people buying food and servants. In order not to affect the living environment, there are no slaughterhouses or vegetable markets nearby. They have to be found a little further away from the residential area. Asta walked around a lot but didn't find anything new. He looked at the time and saw that it was almost 11 o'clock. Then we randomly found a restaurant to eat. Not long after he sat down to eat, he heard someone calling him from behind. Hastur put down his knife and fork, looking for the voice. It was Chief Reed, whom he had met once before. "Baron Campbell, I didn't expect to see you here." Chief Reed followed the two young police officers and walked up with a smile. "Perhaps this is the goddess's guidance." Hastur smiled and invited Chief Reed and the three of them to sit down. He happened to have something to ask Chief Reed. "Praise the goddess." Sheriff Reed clicked 4 times on his chest to draw a crimson moon. He was also a devout believer in the goddess. After the three of them were seated, Hastur called the waiter and ordered 3 more meals. "The food here is affordable and Asta doesn't have to worry about it. Even if we invite a few more people, it won't cost more than £1. Sheriff Reed and the other 3 quickly stood up and thanked them before taking their seats again. While waiting for their meal, Hastur asked him about Andrew. "We do have news about him recently. Someone saw him in the dock area yesterday. He seemed to be going to sea and leaving Backlund. Our police have sent people to guard there to prevent him from getting on the ship and going to sea." Sheriff Reed still had some impression of the fraudster who dared to defraud the nobles. Last time, he led people to secretly guard near Asta's house. Docklands? Hastur frowned slightly, thinking about arresting the fraudster himself if he had the chance. But the dock area was too close to the Sunrise workhouse, and he didn't want to get close. He is very cunning. He might just be making a false move to mislead our judgment. Having said this, Chief Reed sighed. It has been a long time since he started chasing Andrew, but every time he was just a little bit close, he always failed to catch him. "Have you gained anything else?" Hastur tried to ask. At this time, 3 lunches had been delivered. In order not to disturb the conversation between Chief Reed and Hastur, the other 2 young police officers took their own lunches and sat at the table next to them. Sheriff Reed cut off a piece of steak, pondered for a moment and said, "He seems to be very lucky. Every time we are just a little bit close to catching him. One of our men caught a glimpse of him while patrolling. Just when he was about to catch up and see what happened, he was interrupted by other things. Another time, we organized people to start checking the pub late at night, but they arrived a few minutes late and allowed him to slip out of the back door." "Different luck?" Hastur became alert. "Different luck. Is there any extraordinary factor hidden in it?" As far as he knows, the destiny path can give others good luck in encountering good things, and it can also curse others with continuous bad luck. He also recalled that when he was chatting with Professor Wayne, he once said that Voltaire Campbell had bad luck in gambling. He just turned over the cards and won a manor title deed. And Andrew came to blackmail him for £2,000 for no reason. Were they really just here for the money? Or do they want to force themselves to sell them something valuable? When they sneaked into the house where they lived that night, besides themselves, were they also looking for something else? Hastur fell into deep thought, and he knew that maybe he was too worried. It is entirely possible that this is a simple fraud and theft case where a group of fraudsters targeted you and then sneaked into the house to steal. As for the different luck, maybe someone in the police station tipped off Andrew. Seeing Hastur not speaking for a long time, Chief Reed said awkwardly, "We will capture him as soon as possible and we will never let him escape again next time. I have always believed in your abilities and your ability to arrest criminals and put them behind bars." Hastur spoke with a smile, glanced at Sheriff Reed's nearly eaten steak, and said, "Would you like a beer? Thank you for your generosity. Congratulations in advance on the arrest of the criminal." Hastur stretched out his hand to call the waiter and ordered 3 glasses of the best beer here and a drink. I have something to do in the afternoon, so I can't drink. Asta explained. Dockside area. Not long after he separated from Chief Reed, Asta came here alone. In the past, he would not take risks here alone, but now he is playing the role of a barbarian, thinking less and doing more. Now that he has the intention, he comes to the dock area for a walk. Maybe you can actually gain something, after all, fate always attracts each other. Upon arriving at the dock area, he established a rule that the fateful encounter was irresistible. If Andrew is really an extraordinary person in the path of destiny, then there is a high probability that he will meet the other party. Hastur was walking in the dock area. Apart from being wary of pickpockets stealing his money, he walked around aimlessly. If you really have to rely on reasoning to trace, he will definitely not be as professional as the police department. What he focuses on this time is metaphysics. If you can meet the best one, there is no regret if you don't. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Asta still had nothing to gain. He sat in a tavern and ordered 2 smoked sausages, a cup of Earl Grey tea, and a dessert as afternoon tea. Although the food here in the dock area is relatively rough, the smoked sausage is very delicious, much better than some famous restaurants. As for the dessert, the difference is a bit big, neither delicate nor delicious. Asta quietly enjoyed his afternoon tea, his eyes occasionally swept inside and outside the tavern. Maybe he could really meet Andrew here. Halfway through the meal, Asta's eyes glanced at the outside of the tavern and slightly condensed, and he really caught a glimpse of Andrew's figure. Compared with the image of a suit thug when he met last time, Andrew now wrapped himself tightly, his chin was also covered by the collar, and the clothes he wore were common among the workers here. He lowered his eyes, sometimes searching around, sometimes dodging, as if he was avoiding someone. Was he being targeted by the police department? Asta did not pay the bill and stand up immediately, but patiently watched for a while. He wanted to see who Andrew was avoiding. If it was a police officer, he wouldn't have to worry so much, just follow carefully. If it was someone else, he would have to look carefully. Until Andrew's figure was about to disappear, Asta didn't find anyone special following Andrew. Has he become a frightened bird? Asta got up and paid 1 solely 4 pence, went out and mixed in the crowd, following Andrew. He always kept a safe distance of about 10 meters from Andrew, and only when Andrew was about to turn or disappear, he would speed up. The two of them walked one after the other, bypassing several alleys, passing 2 or 3 warehouses, and Andrew finally stopped at the door of a cabin. He searched around first, and then knocked on the door quietly. Soon, a 30-year-old strong man poked his head out, also scanning the surroundings first, and then met Andrew's eyes. After a brief exchange of words, Andrew followed the strong man into the cabin, and the door was closed again. Is this his hiding place? Asta appeared from the corner and stared at the cabin for a while. He now has 2 better choices. One is to go and inform the nearby police officers to come here to arrest people and let the police department solve this matter. The second is to stay here, send someone to notify the nearby police officers, and then act with them. Of course, he chose the third way and rushed straight up. Asta found a thick wooden stick from nearby, weighed the weight, and came to the door of the cabin. He swung the wooden stick in his hand heavily and hit the door that was not very strong. Boom! The whole door collapsed. Asta strode in with a wooden stick in his hand and saw 3 figures in front of him. One of them was Andrew, who looked panicked, and the other 2 strong men looked alert. The black-clothed strong man picked up the bench in the house as a weapon, and the gray-clothed strong man took out the dagger hidden in his arms. The black-clad sturdy man looked at Andrew and cursed, "You idiot, you didn't even know the police came to your door. He's not a policeman, he's Voltaire's son." Andrew recognized Asta's identity and looked even more panicked. He took a step back and hid behind the 2 sturdy men, his eyes rolling, ready to slip away at any time. "Voltaire's son? Huh, did you come to my door yourself?" Yes, I came by myself. Who told you not to look for me again? Asta showed a simple and kind smile on his face, and before the two sturdy men could speak again, he smashed the black-clad sturdy man who was closer with the wooden stick in his hand. The black-clad sturdy man grinned fiercely, swung the bench with both hands, swept it from the right to the left, and smashed it on Asta's temple. The gray-clad sturdy man went around to the side, trying to block Asta's retreat. Asta was one step faster, and the wooden stick hit the black-clad sturdy man's head first. Crack! The wooden stick with heavy force broke in the middle. At the same time, the black-clad sturdy man's head also cracked. His head was buzzing, and before the black-clad sturdy man could marvel at Asta's great strength, he fell backwards, and Andrew quickly dodged to the side. The gray-clad sturdy man originally wanted to block the retreat and attack Asta from the side, but seeing this, he hurriedly ran out of the door. Asta turned around and glanced, and threw the half-broken wooden stick in his hand with all his strength. With a wail, the gray-clad sturdy man was stabbed in the waist by the broken wooden stick, and the heavy force brought him to the open space in front, and his forehead came into close contact with the ground, and he fainted. I was originally aiming at his thigh. Seeing that the gray-clad sturdy man could not run away for a while, Asta silently retracted his gaze and looked at Andrew, who had no way to retreat. He said calmly, "I think we can have a good chat." Andrew shrank back and leaned against the corner of the wall without daring to look up. This made Asta a little confused. He remembered that when they first met, Andrew's performance was not so bad. Has he been stimulated during this period? It seems that you prefer violence to chatting. Asta lifted the square wooden table in the room with one hand and raised it above his shoulder, as if he would cover Andrew with the table if he didn't speak again. Andrew shuddered and begged for mercy. "I really don't know anything. I just want to take the opportunity to extort money. Other things are none of my business." "Who asked you to extort me?" Andrew's face was pale and he moved his lips, but he didn't dare to say anything. At this time, there was a noise outside. It was the dock workers who happened to pass by here. They found a strong man in gray lying on the ground with blood on his waist. Andrew's eyes lit up and he shouted, "Gentlemen! There is a robbery here. Help!" Snap! Asta hit Andrew with the wooden table in his hand, causing him to see stars, bleed from his mouth and nose, and faint. After thinking for a while, Asta first tidied up his messy clothes, took the initiative to walk to the door, blocked the situation in the room, and shouted to the 3 dock workers who came after hearing the sound. "Gentlemen, the gangster just escaped from the back door. He still has a knife in his hand. It's very dangerous. Call the police and arrest him." The 3 dock workers quickly believed what Asta said when they saw his immature face and the clothes that were obviously not from ordinary people. One went to call the police, and the other 2 followed him bravely. After the 3 left, Asta returned to the room, picked up Andrew by the collar with one hand, and took him to another place while no one was around. When he passed by, he kicked the gray-clothed man who was stabbed in the waist by the broken wooden stick. The sewage outlet of a paper mill, where the pipes lead directly to the sea, and untreated industrial sewage directly rushes into the ocean. There was a disgusting smell nearby. Not far from the sewage outlet, Asta held Andrew's legs and put his head close to the black, smelly industrial sewage. Before he touched the industrial sewage, Andrew's body reacted, and a large mouthful of filth spurted out, and the whole person instantly recovered from the coma. He stared blankly for a few seconds before figuring out his current state. "No. I'll tell you everything." Looking at the industrial sewage only a finger away from his lips, Andrew finally begged for mercy. But it was useless. He still watched the smelly industrial sewage soak over his lips and flow into his nasal cavity. A feeling of suffocation from the stench instantly numbed his whole body, but he didn't dare to beg for mercy again, otherwise he would be greeted by a mouthful of chemical drinks. After soaking for 3 or 4 seconds, Asta lifted him out of the water, shook him twice, and then threw him on the shore. Wow! Andrew vomited again, until his face turned blue and his body was weak. He looked at Asta with fear. His lips trembled as he said, "You are simply a devil." He really couldn't imagine how such an elegant nobleman could do such a thing. This is even more vicious and awe-inspiring than the way they punish disobedient people. Now he can still feel numbness, bitterness, astringency and even a little sweetness on the tip of his tongue. Pooh! Andrew quickly spit a few more mouthfuls of saliva, trying to get rid of this complex taste on the tip of his tongue. The devil likes to hear the truth. I hope you don't try to hide anything. If there is one more body here, I'm afraid no one will find it within a month. Even if they find it, they will probably pretend that nothing happened. After all, the body is too smelly, and no one will want to salvage it. Asta's indifferent tone made Andrew's face pale again. He was really scared. I said, "Someone asked me to blackmail you for money." You lied. It seems that you still prefer to drink here. Asta's eyes narrowed, as if he saw through all of Andrew's little thoughts. I didn't. What they actually wanted was something. It was my suggestion to use the excuse of extorting money, so that people would not be suspicious. Andrew shook his head quickly, and tears were about to come out. What is it? They said it was a palm-sized golden box, and I don't know what it is called. Andrew was afraid that Asta would not believe him, so he stretched out his hand to gesture the size of the box. Who are they? I don't know, but there are extraordinary people among them, that is, the kind of existence with extraordinary power. They promised me that as long as I can get the golden box, they will help me become a Sequence 9 criminal. Why don't they come to get it themselves, and need your help? I'm not sure, but I once heard them say this, only people who are related to fate can get things of fate. What's special about you? I really played cards with your father Voltaire at the gambling table, and I won a lot of money from him. Asta stopped asking questions and began to think about the ins and outs of all this. Andrew did not lie about the last few questions. These were really all the information he knew. The key information included, golden box, fate-related, Voltaire Campbell. He had no recollection of the golden box. It might be something Voltaire had hidden away. If it really existed, it would most likely be hidden somewhere on the 3rd floor. The matter of fate was easier to understand. It must be the beyonders of the fate path. They followed the guidance of fate. For many things, their way of dealing with them was a combination of charlatanism and metaphysics. As for Voltaire, he might have been cursed, so he had bad luck all the way, and finally even fell into the water and died. But this could not change the fact that he was a gambler. I've said everything. Can I go now? Seeing that Hastur had not spoken for a long time, Andrew asked timidly. Are you going to jail? Andrew's face turned pale, and he trembled. You don't plan to let me go? Swindling a noble, involving a huge amount of money, don't you have to go to jail? Don't you want to become a Sequence 9 criminal? This is a good opportunity. Andrew, lying on the ground, curled up and said silently. Asta didn't let him go so easily. He counted on his fingers and said, because of you, I broke 2 stained glass windows and was worried for so long. You should compensate a noble for his material and spiritual losses in order to have a fair chance of being sentenced to prison. Andrew understood the subtext of this sentence. If he didn't pay, he would be sunk into this industrial sewage. How much do you want? Oh, how much property do you have? Asta's eyes lit up slightly. If a person doesn't have too much savings, he usually won't ask how much money he wants, but will directly say how much money he has left. Andrew shuddered and hesitantly said, all my property adds up to less than 20 gold pounds. Andrew, why are you lying again? You will anger the devil if you do this. For the sake of gold pounds, Asta is willing to give him another chance to tell the truth. Less than 100 pounds. I really only have this much money. There is really no more. Alas, you are not honest again. Asta walked forward, lifted up Andrew's legs in front of his horrified eyes, and moved sideways with his head down, close to the dark water. I say. I still have more than £200 in cash. There is also a small house at 33 Street in Sherwood District. Is that really all I have? Really? Andrew cried sadly. If he was really that rich, he would not blackmail a nobleman. The more than £200 in cash was the only savings he had saved from years of frugality. Only honest people are qualified to be saved, but you still have to pay a little price for the lie just now. Asta sank his hands down, and Andrew's lips and nose were immersed in industrial sewage again. After a pause of 3 seconds, Asta lifted him out and threw him on the shore. Ugh! Andrew supported the ground with one hand, turned sideways, and vomited again, almost vomiting bile. After Andrew's stomach was almost cleaned, Asta discussed with him the big issue of the amount of compensation. After a cordial and friendly exchange, Mr. Andrew was willing to take out all his cash to compensate Baron Asta Campbell for his mental loss during this period. As for the money for the 2 stained glass windows, Baron Asta Campbell showed the generosity of a noble and waived this considerable fee. Congratulations on your chance to be tried and imprisoned. Andrew curled up, turned his back to Asta, said nothing, and silently reached out to wipe his tears. Answer me a few more questions, and our feud will be over. Asta asked some more about Voltaire's performance at the gambling table in the past and some of his absurd behaviors. After 2 lessons, Andrew behaved very well and was very willing to cooperate with the questioning. When the nearby police officers received the news and rushed over, they saw Andrew hanging on a rope, his legs up and his head down, only a finger away from the black water. The fraudster Andrew had been fainted by the smoke, but fortunately there was no danger of life, but he kept vomiting after waking up. On the other side, Asta had taken £225 and 6 solely as mental damages from Andrew's hiding place. This was a considerable income. Asta's steps became lighter. When he passed a clothing store, he sniffed his clothes and found that they smelled a bit bad. It should be because he stayed at the sewage outlet for too long, and his clothes were stained with the foul smell there. Without hesitation, Asta walked into the clothing store and prepared to buy a new set of clothes. As soon as he entered the clothing store, Asta looked surprised and looked at a figure in front of him who was choosing clothes. Miss Sharon. Is this the irresistible fate of meeting? Asta immediately thought of the rule he had set when he entered the dock area. He had also been to the Brave Bar many times. In addition to attending extraordinary parties, he was thinking about whether he would have a chance to meet Miss Sharon. Unexpectedly, he met her today in an ordinary clothing store in the dock area. She had long hair tied in a light golden bun, blue eyes, delicate features, pale face, and wore a complicated and exquisite black Gothic court dress and a small black soft hat. She was elegant and looked a little serious. Asta's eyes flashed with surprise, and he retracted his gaze and looked at the owner of the clothing store. This was a woman in her 30s, dressed simply but stylishly. I want a decent set of clothes, preferably a rough and bold style. Asta briefly described his requirements, and then asked the boss's wife to recommend a suitable set of clothes for him. Soon, the waitress in the store took a measuring tool to measure the various data of his body in order to select the most fitting clothes. With nothing to do, Asta looked towards Sharon unconsciously, but found that she had disappeared. Maybe she picked out clothes and left while he was chatting with the boss lady. Asta felt a little sorry that they didn't have a few words. The boss lady smiled and said, "A chance encounter always makes people more likely to believe in the existence of fate." Asta heard her implication and smiled. If there is a destiny, the meeting of fate is irresistible. It's really a day that makes people sigh for youth. Youth has never passed away, it has always been well preserved in you. Asta praised and talked to her about Sharon in the boss lady's bright eyes. According to the boss lady, this is the second time Sharon has come to their store to buy clothes. Every time she chooses several sets, all of which are the most popular styles. The last time she bought clothes was 2 months ago. The boss lady once asked Sharon if she wanted to order a few sets for her, but was declined, saying that she preferred to choose her favorite styles from the dazzling array of clothes. As for why such a girl with a different temperament from the dock area would come to the dock area to buy clothes alone, the boss lady did not ask, and she had no idea about private questions such as where she lived. After chatting with the boss lady for about 20 minutes, the waitress just came out and said that she had already chosen the clothes, and then led Asta to try on the clothes under the boss lady's reluctant eyes. After changing clothes, with the boss lady's enthusiastic discount, Asta only paid £3 and bought this set of South Continent-style clothes that could be sold for at least £5 in Queens and left with a small bag of old clothes. After leaving the clothing store, Asta looked around and did not see Miss Sharon. He took a carriage and returned to his home in the West District. As soon as he got on the carriage, a plain voice without ups and downs came into his ears. "Are you the young blonde noble who likes mysticism mentioned by Merrick?" This voice, is it Miss Sharon? Asta's expression moved slightly, and he looked around, but he could not see Miss Sharon. As expected of a Sequence 5 Wraith, his ability to hide is really amazing. If I make a rule that no one can be invisible here, can I let Miss Sharon show her true identity? Asta just thought about it for a moment, but did not take action. He said calmly, "If Merrick didn't know other blonde nobles, then it should be me." "Well, can you do me a favor?" Even if she was asking for help, Miss Sharon's voice was still as calm as water, without any waves, and pleasant to hear. What favor? Asta didn't mind providing some help to Miss Sharon and Merrick. In the metropolis of Backlund, the two of them would be good allies and close friends. Merrick was caught by the police because of some things. I hope you can come forward to solve this matter. Aren't you extraordinary people? Ordinary people will be safer here. Asta understood the meaning of this sentence. Backlund is the capital of all cities where gods may descend at any time. There are many extraordinary people hidden in Backlund, not to mention demigods, even angels. The higher the sequence of the Beyonder, the more careful they must be when they come to Backlund, otherwise they will easily be visited by the Church of the Goddess of Night and the Church of Storms to check the water meter. I need to know clearly why Merrick was arrested, so that I can come forward to help him plead for bail. Backlund Bridge District, Police Branch. Hastur arrived in a carriage. He asked Sharon to wait in the car and went in alone to deal with the matter. Although he didn't know where Sharon was hiding, she shouldn't be too far from the carriage. This time, Merrick's arrest was not a big deal. As long as the other party gave up the pursuit, he would not be punished. The cause of the incident was not complicated. The night before yesterday, someone got drunk and made trouble in the Brave Bar. Merrick asked his zombies to teach the other party a lesson. The zombies didn't control the strength of their hands well and injured the other party, probably to the extent of bruises. In the end, the other party apologized and left the Brave Bar. I thought the matter was over, but I didn't expect that before 20 minutes had passed, the man called the police and said that someone had maliciously beaten a noble. The police came to arrest the person, so Merrick naturally couldn't let his living corpse be taken to the police station, otherwise a big mess would occur. He could only take on the matter by himself, and was caught and locked up at the police station. With the extraordinary abilities of Merrick and Sharon, they can easily escape from prison, but in this way, their identities will be exposed, and it will be difficult to live stably in Backlund. There were many nobles among the people Marisai and Sharon knew, but it was difficult to ask those nobles to help intercede because the injured man was a viscount. It's that Viscount Greylint. Sharon learned through her own channels that the reason why Viscount Greylint went to the Brave Bar that night was because his friend Baron Hastur Campbell had been here many times, so he also wanted to come here to watch. After all, unexpectedly, he was beaten up before he even got a glimpse of the secret. He was so angry that he chose to call the police. Sharon followed this clue and easily found Hastur. After understanding the specific appearance, she communicated with Merrick and decided to come to Hastur to resolve the matter. She originally planned to choose a few more formal outfits and talk to Asta in person about it, but she didn't expect to meet Asta in this clothing store in the dock area. This is what happened later. In this regard, Hastur could only lament that Grey Lint was really lucky. He could meet Merrick, a Sequence 6 Beyonder, once he went to the Brave Bar and sent him to prison. Speaking of which, it was only through the help of Grey Lint that he was able to meet Miss Sharon and make her owe him a small favor. Entering the police station, Hastur identified himself, explained his purpose, and asked the police department to consult Grey Lint for his opinion. About an hour later, Asta took Merrick out of the police station gate, got into the carriage, and headed to where Grey Lint lived. He had to tell Grey Lint personally about this matter. After knowing that Grey Lint had been looking for the recipe for the medicine master's potion and wanted to enter the extraordinary world, Merrick asked Hastur to take him with him. He said that he could help Grey Lint solve the problem of the pharmacist's potion formula. Hastur did not reveal his little thoughts. He clearly wanted to show his identity as an Beyonder in front of Grey Lint. Also, being locked up in jail for 2 days and 1 night, I must have been holding back some anger in my heart. Asta did not refuse Marichi's request. Marichi went to see Grey Lint to express that he would expose this matter and would not seek revenge in the future. Otherwise, if Grey Lint made him suffer such a loss this time, he would have to be careful when going out in the future, as he would be beaten up by his zombie team at any time. In the villa, Grey Lint learned that Hastur was coming to visit, so he prepared tea early and waited. When he saw Hastur leading Merrick in together, Grey Linty's face stiffened slightly, and he quickly raised his chin slightly and hummed softly. In his opinion, Hastur brought the other party here to make the other party apologize to him. With a smile in his eyes, Merrick walked up to Grey Lint and spoke with a slight smile on his lips, "Viscount Grey Lint, let's get to know Merrick again, a Sequence 6 Beyonder." Grey Lint was stunned for a while, then looked up at Hastur. After receiving Hastur's confirmation, he froze on the spot. A Sequence 6 Beyonder. This should be the strongest Beyonder he knows. During this time, he gained a lot of knowledge about mysticism from Hastur, and he probably knew what kind of existence Sequence 6 was. That is already a sequence representing the middle power in the extraordinary world. He himself has not even entered the initial Sequence 9 yet. After the shock, Grey Lint smiled bitterly and gave Hastur a look asking for help. "Don't worry, Mr. Merrick is from the lawful good camp and will not secretly deal with you because of what happened before." Hastur asked Grey Lint to relax. Before Grayling could figure out what the lawful good camp represented, he heard Merrick in front of him say gloomily, "I am not from the lawful good camp. I just like to kill people and turn them into living corpses. This way even if he dies, he cannot escape my control." Grey Linty shuddered, his face turned slightly pale, and finally he forced a smile and said, "Mr. Merrick is joking, you must be a good person. No matter how good a person is put in prison, his character will change." Grey Linty breathed a sigh of relief when he heard this. The other party wanted an apology from him. "Mr. Merrick, this matter is my fault, and I am willing to compensate accordingly." Before he could finish speaking, Merrick interrupted, "Forget it, I'm not that stingy. Let's just let this matter go." "Well, it's for his sake." Merrick pointed at Haas Tower. "Grey Lint and I are very good friends," Hastur said with a smile. Grey Linty's face gradually returned to normal, and he felt much more relaxed. "I have the recipe for the medicine master's potion that you need. How many gold pounds do you plan to pay?" Merrick gave Glallant another surprise. 300 gold pounds. After reacting, Grey Linty directly quoted a relatively high price. Hastur once told him that the price of the Sequence 9 potion formula was between 200 and 300 gold pounds. The medicine master's potion formula is relatively valuable, about 250 gold pounds. "You're generous and a good bargain," Merrick said, taking out a piece of paper from his arms and handing it to Grey Lint, and said, if you can't gather the extraordinary materials above, you can come to me for help. Of course, I will charge you a certain amount of hard work. Grey Linty took the paper with a smile and said with excitement, "This is what it should be, it should be." He did not have the slightest doubt about the authenticity of the pharmacist's potion formula. He did not believe in Merrick, but in Hastur's credibility. If Hastur wanted to lie to him, he would have given him a fake medicine master's potion formula long ago. There was no need to wait until now. "You have better luck than me." Hastur gave Glarant a reassuring look. Merrick and Sharon were still trustworthy. Ha ha. Grey Lint smiled for a while, and then hurriedly asked the servant to go down and prepare some things so that Merrick and Hastur could stay for dinner. Merrick was in the living corpse sequence. He didn't really need to eat, so he politely refused to leave. Of course, Hastur couldn't just slap his butt and leave like Merrick. He also had to thank Grey Lint for giving him thin noodles today, and at the same time he had to answer some of Grey Lint's doubts. After all, he can be regarded as the guide for Grey Linty to enter the extraordinary world. After dinner, Grey Lint took Hastur to his study to chat and ask some questions about extraordinary materials. Hastur only recommended him a fairly trustworthy black market for trading extraordinary materials. He believed that Grey Lint would not be stupid enough to take risks himself every time. When it comes to buying extraordinary materials, he can definitely send someone he trusts to buy them. At the end of the conversation, Grey Lint mentioned that he was going to hold a small private party this week, saying that he wanted to give him a little shock. "Did you invite Miss Audrey?" Asta made a casual guess. He noticed something was wrong with Audrey's expression last time they met. "Hastur, can't you act a little stupid sometimes?" "Grey Lint, I also hope you can become smarter." "Oh, I can't be this friend anymore." Grey Linty sighed, but his depression was quickly dissipated by the joy of the pharmacist's potion formula, and he smiled and left Hastur to chat for a while longer. Before leaving, Hastur specifically told Grey Lint not to tell others about the resurrection ceremony he had held, otherwise it would cause trouble. Grey Lint, who had already half-stepped into the extraordinary world, now began to realize how terrifying it was to hold a resurrection ceremony. Although the ritual ultimately failed, it was still terrifying. After hearing Hastur's instructions, he quickly agreed and promised not to tell anyone else in the future. When he got home, Asta looked at his pocket watch. Around 9:30, he asked someone to prepare a substantial midnight snack. When he came to the bathroom and was about to take a shower, a slim figure appeared in the mirror in front of him. She was wearing a Gothic palace dress of a different color than this afternoon, and a small black gauze hat. Her blue eyes were like a pool of clear water, without any ripples flowing. Seeing Asta look over, she held up the skirts on both sides of her hands, gracefully performed court etiquette, and then disappeared from the mirror. Hastur didn't have time to say anything. He could only lament that the extraordinary ability of the resentful soul was really elusive and unpredictable. "Fortunately, I was still wearing clothes. If Miss Sharon suddenly appeared in the mirror while I was taking a shower, it would be really scary. But Miss Sharon won't be so boring, right?" Hastur tried calling twice in a low voice, but when he received no response, he felt relieved. Pausing in front of the mirror for a while, Hastur summoned his spiritual power and formulated a new rule for this bathroom. Invisibility is prohibited here. Hiding is prohibited. After the rules were generated, Hastur turned on his spiritual vision again and checked it carefully, and indeed found no trace of Miss Sharon. He couldn't help but feel happy. He was just taking a bath, but he felt like a thief. The feeling of being a thief in your own home is really new. After taking a shower and eating a delicious late-night snack, Asta was particularly excited. He looked at his pocket watch and saw that there was still more than an hour before 11:30. He came to the study and began to study advanced legal books. With the barbarian's physical bonus, he is now very energetic. Even if he is reading these complicated and boring legal provisions, he will not feel tired. It wasn't until 2 hours later that he put down his books and stretched back to the bedroom to rest. After lying on the bed for a while, he entered the Hall of Stars, with 2 chains of order hanging on both sides of him, swaying gently. Hastur stared at the star where the jinn was for a long time, and finally resisted the idea of lashing him a few times. "I'm used to smoking, but I'm still a little uncomfortable at the moment." Sighing, he looked at the star where the mother tree of desire was, then looked back and began to think about what kind of rules should be formulated for the second chain of order. With the first rule as a foundation, he can now think more freely about some rules other than combat power, such as fate. From the time he was born in the mysterious world until now, it seems that he has a deep relationship with the word fate. The name Asta Campbell is not a simple name in mysticism. Whether the king in yellow exists or not, it is something that needs to be vigilant. A person's name may affect a person's fate. In mysticism, the relationship between the two is even closer. And he has already carried this fate. Voltaire Campbell, the gambler, seems to have been cursed by the extraordinary person of the fate path, which made his gambling luck extremely unlucky, and finally lost his property and drowned by the river. Andrew came to blackmail himself, and there was also the shadow of the extraordinary person of the fate path behind him. Connecting this series of things, it seems that his fate has been arranged by someone. So can I use the Hall of Stars to make myself jump out of the influence of fate as much as possible? Make a fate that jumps out of fate. This is obviously impossible, because no matter what kind of fate it is still fate, and there is no fate that jumps out of fate. Then we can only reduce or get rid of the influence of fate on ourselves as much as possible. How should such rules be formulated? Asta was in trouble again and fell into deep thought. This was not something he could determine in a day or two, and he still had time to think slowly. At 6 in the morning, Asta had already woken up from his deep sleep. With the physique of a barbarian, his sleep time could be greatly reduced, and 4 hours of sleep a day was enough. When he got up and had nothing to do, he went to the study to continue reading legal books. At about 8:30, after breakfast, Asta asked the coachman to go to the suburbs. With nothing to do, he planned to go to the village where the old man lived and erect a monument for him. This was the only thing he could do for the old man. In the story narrated by the old man, he had no relatives or friends, nor any descendants, but lived alone in a secluded village in the suburbs. The suburbs were a bit far away, and with the bumpy carriage, it took Asta nearly 4 hours to reach the small village. Surrounded by mountains on 3 sides and water on 1 side, it is indeed a suitable place for retirement. However, for the villagers here, such a topographic pattern is the root cause of their poverty and backwardness. There are more mountains and fewer plains, and there are no rare mines nearby, so no company will come here to invest and build factories to drive economic growth. Asta's arrival attracted many people's attention. This place is a distance away from the city, and few nobles come here on weekdays. Hearing that Asta was looking for the old man, the villagers were discussing privately, could it be that the old man's grandson came to look for relatives? A young man who was responsible for leading the way was very talkative. Without Asta saying too much, he told everything he knew one by one. The old man was also a strange man in the village. Although he came from another place and lived alone, there was always endless meat at home. According to the hunters who went up the mountain to hunt, the old man was very familiar with the mountain environment and was very good at hunting. As long as he went around the mountain, he could have endless meat in a week. On weekdays, the old man occasionally used his prey to exchange some daily necessities with the villagers, and the price was very fair, so the villagers had a good relationship with him. Under the guidance of the young man, Asta came to the old man's house and pushed open the door. There were not many things in the room, but they were all neatly arranged. Asta thought that this should be a habit cultivated by the old man's many years of military career. He did not disturb the old man's house too much, but asked the young man to help him get a set of the old man's clothes, buy a small piece of grave, bury the clothes, and set up a monument for the old man. It read, a confessor, an eternal warrior. After doing all this, Asta took out 1 gold pound and handed it to the busy young man, and then got on the carriage and returned in the strange eyes of the villagers. As for lunch, he bought some local bread in the village, dealt with it a little, and had a big meal after returning. On the carriage, Asta looked at the mountains in the distance and thought about it. He wanted to play a barbarian in the metropolis of Backland, which was a very difficult thing and easy to attract other people's attention. But if he goes to the suburbs, near the mountains and forests, will he be able to play the role of a barbarian more easily? For barbarians, wildness is also a very important point. Nothing can liberate wildness better than the natural environment. It's just that in the suburbs, far away from the urban circle, the risk factor is relatively high. You can consider letting Merrick act as your bodyguard for a period of time. If Miss Sharon is willing to come, it will be safer. Asta thinks this method is very feasible. It happens that he also has a large manor in the suburbs, which he has not visited yet. It's a good time to go and take a look, but don't let it be ruined by mosquitoes, snakes and rats. After returning home, Asta talked to butler Neil about the suburban manor. If you want to live in a suburban manor, you need to hire at least 10 more people, maids, gardeners, handymen. Try to reduce the number of people, and arrange other things as you said. When will you go to live there? Is it okay within 3 days? If the manor is very large, 3 days will not be enough time to clean and decorate it. Asta didn't know how to answer this question. He had never been to the manor, but he had heard from the old butler that the manor was very large. As for how large it was, he didn't have a specific idea. Well, you can arrange it as early as possible. Asta decided to be a hands-off shopkeeper, and leave these troublesome things to butler Neil. In his words, this is the meaning of the butler's existence. Looking at the pocket watch, it was almost 7 o'clock. Asta took a short rest at home, then went out and got on the carriage to the Brave Bar. He needs to discuss this matter with Merrick and the others. Under normal circumstances, Merrick would not refuse, but it is hard to guarantee that they do not want to take this risk. When they arrived at the Brave Bar, Caspus came to meet Asta before he went to find him. With a serious face, he led Asta to a secluded corner. When there was no one around, he whispered, because of the fight some time ago, Merrick may be targeted and needs to hide for a while. Asta understood and smiled. I have a big manor in the suburbs. If he is willing, he can come there as a guest. It's really a good place. Caspus whispered, his expression was much more relaxed, and he did not talk to Asta anymore. He pretended that he just happened to meet and turned around and left here. Asta waited for a while before leaving here and returned to the Brave Bar to order a cocktail called Blue Jellyfish. Fortunately, it was not called Blue Enchantress, otherwise it would be really hard to swallow. Asta sat at the bar and ordered another snack, which he slowly tasted with the cocktail. Half an hour later, Hastur left the Brave Bar in a carriage. When he got home, he went straight to the study. In order to deal with Miss Sharon's mysterious visit, he deliberately placed a mirror on the right side of the study. In front of the mirror, he also placed a sofa, which was conducive to the conversation between the two parties. I believe Miss Sharon will understand what he means and will not wait until he is about to take a shower to enter the mirror in the bathroom. Before Miss Sharon came, Hastur sat at the desk and flipped through books. Although he has passed the need to play a lawyer now, learning the law will still help him in his future sequence promotion. It was almost 11 o'clock before Miss Sharon's figure appeared in the mirror in the study. She was still wearing the familiar Gothic court-style long skirt, and the small black hat embellished on her blonde hair looked very cute. Sharon, this is my name. The voice was very faint, without ups and downs, but Hastur liked such a voice very much. He hated the noisy and chattering voice. Asta Campbell, I'm glad to meet Miss Sharon. Asta got up and sat on the sofa, looking at Miss Sharon in the mirror, and also made a brief introduction. Merrick does need to hide for a while, the suburban manor is very good. I'm not sure how long it will take to tidy up the manor, so I can't give you an exact time. Marek can wait for you near the manor first. Asta nodded, gave a manor address, and asked, will Miss Sharon go there too? Not necessarily. Isn't it too dangerous to stay here alone? No, they can't find me. Miss Sharon is really confident in her own strength. It should be that the demigods who are chasing them don't dare to get close to Backland. It is indeed very difficult for the extraordinary people below the demigod to find a resentful soul extraordinary person in the big city of Backland. Asta chatted with Miss Sharon for a few more words, and found that there was no more time to chat. Miss Sharon's personality is not a person who will take the initiative to chat. Even if she answers, she tries to be brief and restrained. Generally, she will not take the initiative to bring up topics. Miss Sharon seems to like this style of clothes. Asta tried to find a topic. Yes, I like it. Have you ever considered changing your style of dress? Sharon just stared at Asta without answering. From her eyes, Asta could read that she was still a little interested in this matter. Miss Sharon, please wait a moment. Asta left the sofa, walked to the desk, took out a pen and paper, and began to paint. He drew a simple picture of Lolita clothing. The design of this kind of clothing is not much different from the Gothic court dress that Sharon likes. The main difference is that their styles are somewhat different. Miss Sharon likes Gothic court dresses with black as the main color, which highlights an elegant mystery with a terrifying death element, which is very consistent with the field of mysticism. The simple picture drawn by Asta is mainly blue and white, with lace and floral fabrics. It is a classic and elegant style without losing its innocence and cuteness. Because of the ink limitation, Asta deliberately marked the corresponding color next to it so that Miss Sharon can see it more clearly. After finishing writing, Hastur looked at his masterpiece with satisfaction and imagined the scene of Miss Sharon wearing this blue and white Lolita costume with a bass tone. Miss Sharon should look very cute like that, right? Sharon looked at the sketch of the Lolita costume, but didn't speak for a long time, and finally disappeared under Asta's surprised eyes. Can't you accept a style that's too cute? Asta regretted putting away this simple picture. He had not used the pink color yet. If it were paired with cakes, candies, and small animals, the cuteness would definitely be off the charts. Ahem, he felt that he didn't have any bad habits, but looking at Miss Sharon's exquisite doll-like appearance, he wanted to design several different styles of clothing for her. Maybe my painting was too ugly, which made Miss Sharon disgusted. Asta considers himself to be an average painter and not a professional. Late at night, Hastur came to the Hall of Stars, skipping the star where the Jinn was, and staring at the star where the Mother Tree of Desire was. I really want to crack a whip to test it, otherwise I will feel a little uneasy if I have to drag him into the Palace of Stars in the future. Well, just a whip. It is better than dragging him to the Palace of Stars and then guarding against him. There were definitely risks, but he couldn't always just have face-to-face meetings with the Jinn. Before that, Hastur first changed his form and appeared as the ruler of the Hall of Stars. Then with a thought in his mind, he drove a chain of order to reach outside the star where the Mother Tree of Desire was. The chain curved and was drawn down like thunder. The starlight shattered, and the chain of order picked up a fruit with a human face. The fruit with a human face shook in fright, and the sound of a baby crying could be heard. The crying sound also woke up other nearby face fruits, and the babbling baby crying quickly gathered like a sea and resounded throughout the sky. At the same time, Hastur hurriedly let the chain of order turn into starlight and disperse, and at the same time retracted his gaze from the star. He was sure that if he had been in the same time and space as the Mother Tree of Desire just now, he would have been polluted by the sea-like cry of a baby. Devoured. At that last moment, he could sense that the Mother Tree of Desire was awakening, and his eyes were about to peep at it. After waiting for a while, there was no movement at all except for the black light surrounding the star where the Mother Tree of Desire was located. Hastur turned his gaze to the star again. The Mother Tree of Desire was indeed watching here, and even stretched out a branch and struck twice at the location where the chain of order disappeared. But no matter how hard he tried, his power could not pass through the starry sky and reach the Palace of Stars. This scene surprised and puzzled Hastur. In what way does the Palace of Stars connect the time and space between the two places? Why can he drive the chain of order to the location of the Mother Tree of Desire, but he cannot follow the chain of order to find the Palace of Stars? Could it be that the Palace of Stars is not a real place? So whether it is the Jinn God or the Mother Tree of Desire, they cannot find it and cannot let their power affect this place. Existing entirely in an imaginary place. Hastur scanned the Hall of Stars and felt that everything here did not seem to be completely fictitious. It might be that his current rank was too low to understand the secrets of the Hall of Stars. Maybe there is another possibility. The Palace of Stars does exist, but it is not outside the starry sky, but within the barrier left by the original creator. That's why the Mother Tree of Desire cannot directly affect this place through the barrier. What about the Jinn? What is his reason? Could it be that he is too weak now? Sealed in the wishing magic lamp by the Lord of Mysteries, relying on his high rank and the wishing magic lamp, his defense power is indeed very powerful, and even the true God cannot split him open. But the power he can display is already very weak, and he cannot pass through the starry sky and reach the Palace of Stars. If he was really powerful, it would have been impossible for him to remain in Bernadette's hands, and he would have already polluted Bernadette and returned to the starry sky. If you can't even deal with a sequence 3, then it's normal that you can't deal with the Hall of Stars. Hastur thought carefully, but felt that it was not that simple. The origin of the Hall of Stars may be more mysterious than he thought. The 9 major sources of Earth, Sea of Chaos, Source Castle, Mother's Nest, River of Eternal Darkness, City of Disaster, Kingdom of Disorder, World of Shadows, Wilderness of Knowledge, and Key of Light. There is no source of matter here that corresponds to the authority and ability displayed in the Palace of Stars. At first, Hastur thought that the Palace of Stars might be part of the source of the Kingdom of Disorder, but when the Jinn was unable to intervene in the Palace of Stars, he rejected this speculation. The Kingdom of Disorder originally belonged to the Jinn God. If the Jinn God came here, he would definitely react, and even directly take away the Kingdom of Disorder and break through the seal. The power of the stars. Hastur remembered what the Jinn said again. Order and rules are only part of the Palace of Stars, and the stars are the masters here. The next morning, Asta went to Backland University after a long absence. He had 2 classes with Professor Wayne, and then went to the cafeteria with Professor Falun to have dinner. I have some things to deal with recently, and I don't have time to be a legal aid for the time being. It's such a regrettable thing. I will tell them for you. Lecturer Falun was not too surprised by Hastur's decision. It was impossible for a nobleman to concentrate on being a lawyer, let alone a legal aid, all the time. After dinner and farewell to Lecturer Falun, Hastur went to the court and listened there all afternoon. When I returned home at 5:30, Butler Neil walked towards me with a worried look on his face. I took people to take a tour of the manor this morning. It is too big. It will definitely not be enough to recruit 10 new people. It will take at least 20 people to maintain all aspects of the entire manor. Then, Butler Neil described the general situation of the manor to Hastur. It covers a large area, and there are 3 lakes in the manor. One is an artificial lake in front of the garden, and the other 2 lakes are behind the house. There are also sculpture gardens, art galleries, playgrounds, wild forest parks and other areas. The main building has at least 60 rooms, not including bathrooms, study rooms, balconies, kitchens and other rooms used for other purposes. This is a place specially used by the nobles to hold grand receptions, large banquets, garden parties and other activities. Generally, only aristocratic families have the ability to maintain such a large manor. Hastur listened silently and quickly thought of a question. There must be many collections in such a large manor, right? It is the tradition of many great nobles to collect items that are rich in history and value and use them as exhibits for their own families. As long as you take out a few collectibles, you can sell them for at least tens of thousands of gold pounds, right? Butler Neil broke his thoughts. The manor is not suitable for hosting outsiders for the time being. Except for some daily necessities, everything else including collections has been moved away. This is very unseemly for a nobleman. One thing. He chose his words very carefully and did not directly say that the collection was lost in gambling by the previous Baron Campbell. Hastur had only one thought in his mind: gambling on dogs should be damned. Such a huge family fortune will never be used up in a lifetime as long as you don't invest in gambling and just eat, drink and have fun. If you want to move in addition to the necessary cleaning and grooming, you also need to fill in some missing items in the manor and repair some places. This is a big expense. Is 100 gold pounds enough? Asta reported a number with a headache. Not very decent. Butler Neil hesitated and said this. 200 gold pounds. I will try to handle this matter within 5 days. Well, let's do this first. Asta sighed. The mental damage fee he finally got back from Andrew had to be paid out before he could cover up the heat. The life of a noble is really a waste of money. Tuesday, April 11th. Grey Lint held a small party in the villa, and Hastur arrived at the villa an hour early at Grey Lint's urging. The only people at the real party tonight were Grey Linty, Asta, Audrey, and Forsey. Originally, Grey Linty had no intention of inviting Forsey to the party, but considering that having only Audrey as a lady would make the situation more awkward, he sent someone to send an invitation to Forsey. At the same time, it can be regarded as a thank you for Forsey's hard work on the pharmacist's potion formula. Asta, I have prepared all the extraordinary materials. What should I do now? Grey Linty looked at the table full of materials in front of him, looking very excited. It's very simple, just mix them together according to the dosage on the formula. It's that simple. Grey Linty blinked, feeling that this was too perfunctory. After all, this is the beginning of stepping into the extraordinary world. Even if there is no need to hold any ceremony, it should still be a special place, right? Asta said with a smile, sometimes extraordinary is that simple. Asta, help me match it. Hastur put away the smile on his face and said seriously, Grey Lint, the extraordinary world is far more dangerous than you think. Some things need to be dealt with by yourself. If you blindly seek help, it will be difficult to go far in the extraordinary world. Then I can prepare it myself. Well, I will guide you from the side. Good. Grey Lint took a few deep breaths, and slowly started to mix the extraordinary ingredients together according to the instructions in the potion formula, and finally concentrated it into a cup of thick green liquid. Smelling the pungent smell of the potion, Grey Lint's facial features twitched together slightly, and finally he drank the medicine master's potion in one gulp under Hastur's gaze. Remember, every time you take a potion, it is a competition with madness. Suppress the madness, stay rational, and try to prevent yourself from being affected by those strange phenomena and nonsense. Hastur carefully guided Grey Lint on the side, allowing him to gradually pass this stage. As for the extraordinary means of activating spiritual vision, he planned to wait for Grey Lint to rest for a few days before telling him. He had always felt that Grey Lint was not very talented in the field of mysticism, and it was better to do things step by step. As for the acting method and the 2 extraordinary laws, he will not tell him, but will only guide him slowly. Otherwise, with Grey Linty's big mouth, he could easily leak this knowledge and cause trouble and danger for himself. By the time the 2 came out of the secret room, Audrey and Forsey had been waiting in the study for more than 10 minutes. Although the 2 of them didn't know each other yet, there was no awkward silence. I wasted time. Grey Lint smiled awkwardly, and then introduced Audrey and Forsey respectively. Have you become an extraordinary person? Forsey saw that Grey Linty's face was pale and there was cold sweat on her forehead. Her spiritual power seemed to be leaking out, which made her make a guess. Hearing this, Audrey also cast a curious look. Gray Lint raised his chin slightly, unable to control his smile, and raised his voice. Yes, I am already an extraordinary, a sequence 9 medicine master. You like to show off, Gray Linty, you are still too young. Hastur sighed in his heart. If it were him, he would never show off such a thing, or even want others to know that he was already an extraordinary. Extraordinary? Gray Lint really succeeded. Audrey was shocked. She was also pursuing the extraordinary, but she had not yet started. Unexpectedly, Gray Linty could be ahead of her on this matter. Forsey didn't feel anything at all and was still lazily leaning on the sofa. Audrey was quite envious and said, Gray Lint, I didn't expect you to be one step ahead of me. I need to thank my good friend, Hastur, for all this. He found the pharmacist's potion formula for me, so that I can successfully enter the extraordinary world. Gray Lint enthusiastically gave the credit to Hastur. In the previous conversation with Marek asked him not to reveal his identity as much as possible, and he naturally complied. Is Baron Campbell also an extraordinary? Audrey's curious eyes fell on Hastur. Gray Lint was also curious about this issue. Hastur said with a smile, I haven't decided which path to take yet. Didn't you successfully hold a resurrection ceremony? Audrey became more and more curious. She had heard Gray Linty tell many legendary stories about Hastur. It is precisely because I was lucky enough to survive this disaster that I dare not embark on an extraordinary path at will. As he spoke, Hastur tapped 4 times in front of him to draw a crimson moon, and said piously, Praise the goddess. Audrey's heart trembled and she asked in confusion, Is the extraordinary road dangerous? Well, it's more dangerous than the adventure stories in the books, and certainly more magical. Looking into Audrey's innocent eyes, Asta added, If you don't have a certain level of awareness, it's better not to enter the extraordinary world and become a noble. It's also a good choice. Yes, the extraordinary world is dangerous and scary. Forsey has a good say on this issue. She has personally experienced dangers more than once, especially on the night of the full moon. I will think about it carefully. Audrey said with a smile, Thank you Baron Campbell and Ms. Force for your advice. Don't worry, I will act as a forerunner and open up a way forward for you. Gray Lint was obviously a little distracted. Audrey smiled but said nothing. Compared to Gray Lint, who always liked to show off his excellent side, she was more willing to let Baron Campbell be the guide on her extraordinary path. The other party was far superior to Gray Lint in terms of conversational skills and mystical knowledge. Miss Audrey, if you have any questions about occult knowledge, you can ask my friend Asta. Having shown his excellent side, Gray Lint decided not to carry it any longer and planned to go down and take a rest first, otherwise he would have a severe headache. Soon, Gray Lint found a reason to leave first, leaving Asta to entertain Audrey and Forsey. Miss Audrey, what kind of extraordinary person do you want to be? Asta smiled and dropped the topic to avoid an awkward atmosphere. Mysterious, powerful, and omnipotent. After Audrey finished speaking, her face felt a little hot, thinking to herself, was this statement too childish? Miss Audrey's idea is very consistent with my imagination of extraordinary people. Forsey took over the topic. Aren't all extraordinary people like this? Of course not. Some extraordinary paths are very cruel. Although they are powerful, they are accompanied by heavy blood and killing along the way. Is it so scary? Well, they are scarier than the most evil criminals in novels. Audrey was a little frightened by Forsey's words and looked at Hastur, seeking his explanation. Asta said with a smile, Crazy and chaos are indeed common, but there are also better types of extraordinary people, such as pharmacists. They can treat diseases and save people, and treat diseases that ordinary doctors cannot treat. Extraordinary people such as readers, generalists, and secret voyeurs pursue knowledge, use knowledge to help others, and even promote the progress of the entire society. It is said that Emperor Russell was once a generalist. Many of the technologies he developed have improved our lives to this day. Asta talked about it in detail, but did not explain it in depth. At most, it only touched on the level of Sequence 9. As for the knowledge of acting, extraordinary laws, and Sequence 0 above Sequence 1, he couldn't speak a single word. After the three of them talked for more than an hour, Audrey finally understood why Graylint particularly admired Baron Campbell. His knowledge of mysticism was so profound that even Ms. Furs, who had become a Beyonder, could only be a student who listened to his lectures obediently in front of him. And she felt that Baron Campbell had a lot of knowledge that he had not yet shared, and his knowledge was as deep and unfathomable as the sea. Do you think I should pursue a higher sequence promotion? Furs was inspired by Asta's words. Lying down is also a very reasonable way of life, if you don't care about being powerless when facing danger. Since it is so dangerous, can lying down and not going out reduce the occurrence of danger? Of course. Hearing this, the flame that ignited in Furs' heart went out again. She felt that she should just lie down and try not to go out of the door. Safety is the first priority. Which Beyonder path is suitable for me? It was a little late, and Audrey asked the question she wanted to ask the most. It's good to be a spectator. This is more in line with your original intention of pursuing an extraordinary world. Thank you. Audrey sincerely thanked Baron Campbell for his advice. Asta smiled and said nothing. He knew the potion formula of the audience, but he didn't want to tell Audrey at this time, so as not to affect her future direction. Let her follow the established trajectory, that is the most suitable path for her. Not long after, Graylint, who had rested for a while, came again. After chatting for another half an hour, Audrey was about to leave. She couldn't come out too late. Her personal maid had reminded her twice. Asta and Furs also used the excuse to end the party tonight, which made Graylint very reluctant to leave. Astor Manor. Marichi came to the vicinity of this large manor 2 days ago. He didn't go directly into the manor, but just walked around the area near the manor. This manor with a magnificent scale, exquisite sculptures, beautiful lakes and a large area, had only 2 people guarding it when he first came. One was an elderly man and the other was a taciturn middle-aged man. The 2 of them guarded the large manor, but did not live inside. Instead, they lived in a small house at the corner. Every day, the old man either went to the garden to trim branches and do gardening work, or lay on a piece of grass in front of the manor to bask in the warm sun. The middle-aged man was more diligent. He would carry stones back from the mountains, and then carve his own works in the sculpture garden. He was also responsible for the 3 meals a day for the 2 of them. On weekdays, the 2 of them rarely communicated. They only talked occasionally during meals, and basically talked about it raining today and it might be sunny tomorrow. Not long after, a man who looked like a butler came with a group of people. They opened the door of the manor house, went into the house to clean and repair, and also moved a lot of daily necessities. Merrick watched quietly without disturbing them. From the occasional conversations of those people, he knew that they were the butlers and servants of Asta's family, so he stopped staring at this place and came to a lake in the forest behind, hiding here temporarily, and there was also a team of zombies with him. I don't know if it's because the vegetation here is dense, but he always feels a little cold, especially late at night. On the first night, he didn't care too much, thinking that he was a newcomer and was not used to the environment here. After all, this is the suburbs, and there is a forest outside. It is normal that the temperature is lower than in the city. On the second night, he felt something was wrong. He was a Sequence 6 zombie, and the Sequence characteristics had long made him not easily affected by the temperature difference outside, especially the low-temperature environment. On the third night, a cold wind blew in the middle of the night, and even the lake was covered with a layer of light frost, which made him alert. But he still didn't act easily. He waited silently until dawn, and the sun shone warmly, and then he led his zombie team to explore deep in the forest. In order to prevent anything bad from happening, he let 2 zombies explore the way in front, keeping a safe distance of about 50 meters from himself and other zombies. Always vigilant, he explored deeply, and except for finding signs of human activity in the depths, he didn't find any other problems. The forest here is connected to more than one Astor manor, as well as the manors of other nobles, which can be regarded as a shared forest park. It was normal to have traces of human activities, and he even avoided 2 waves of noble teams that had nothing to do and went into the forest for hunting and adventure. After searching without results, he returned to the lake and dug a pit to bury the zombies in the soil to avoid being easily discovered. On the 4th night, the sky was cloudless, the moonlight was just right, and the temperature in the forest was exceptionally cold. The zombies that were originally buried in the deep pit made a scratching sound. Marek, who was not sleepy at all, immediately discovered the abnormality of his zombie team. He looked into the deep forest and frowned. This was the first time he encountered such a thing. Faintly, he heard the sound of a whistle in the depths of the forest, very light and cold, as if a tentacle stretched out from the bottom of his heart and kept scratching his heart. He didn't dare to explore the secrets in the forest casually, so he could only try his best to suppress his zombie team and prevent them from being affected. Fortunately, this place was a little far from the place where the whistle was blown, and the zombies were affected to a limited extent, and he could still suppress them alone. It lasted for about 2 hours before the whistle sound in the deep forest disappeared completely, and the living corpses became quiet and lay obediently in the pit. Marek was silent for a long time, but still did not choose to stir up trouble. If something happened again, he would be in trouble. On the 5th day, Marek finally saw Hastur's figure getting off the carriage. Seeing that there were a lot of people nearby, he didn't go to disturb them, and planned to wait until the night was quiet before reminiscing with Hastur. At the gate of Zun Manor, Asta looked at this large manor and was stunned for a while. Butler Neil told him before that the manor was very big, but he didn't expect it to be so big. The garden area in front of the door alone is twice the size of the house he lives in now, and there is also the artificial lake, with fountains surging and water dripping everywhere. On the right is the sculpture garden. From this position, you can vaguely see that it is definitely not small. I heard from Butler Neil that there is now a sculptor who is responsible for carving here. The sculptor has been paid. Although he didn't quite remember the glorious moments of the Campbell family, he was certain that this manor was rare even among the entire great nobility. To be able to survive in the hands of Voltaire Campbell, a gambler, the old butler must have put in a lot of effort. Close to here is the manor owned by Earl Richard, and further away there is a manor belonging to the royal family. Butler Neil patiently introduced Hastur to the nearby nobles so that they would not be unfamiliar with them. Hastur walked into the manor while listening. Passing through the garden area, Hastur met the old man responsible for guarding the place. He was the cousin of the old butler and a member of the Campbell family who was loyal to the family. He was not young and was ill, so he took the initiative to stay in the manor and take on the job of guarding the place. Originally, there were more than 40 people in the manor, including maids, workers, chefs and other positions. However, before the original owner was about to hold the resurrection ceremony, he fired these people, leaving only the sculptor and the old man who had not completed the sculpture work. Companion. When the old man saw Hastur, a smile appeared on his wrinkled face and he said, "It's great that the Campbell family has finally welcomed its true heir." Hastur couldn't help but sigh, how disappointing the original Voltaire Campbell was. The old butler has been very kind to me. Regardless of the future glory or decline of the Campbell family, your future will be taken care of by the Campbell family. Asta made a solemn promise. Yes, the glory of the Campbell family will once again shine through the entire Lone Kingdom. The old man looked very excited, and Asta quickly gave him a hand to prevent him from slipping and falling. Asta looked at Butler Neil aside and said, "In the future, we will recruit a family doctor." Okay. Butler Neil understood the meaning of Hastur's words, which was to hire a dedicated doctor for the old man in front of him, who would be responsible for taking good care of him so that he could spend his old age peacefully. After chatting for a while, Hastur asked the old man to go down to rest first and asked someone to prepare a large room for him in the house. At 7 o'clock in the evening, Hastur enjoyed a belated dinner in the manor. He originally wanted the old man to have a meal with him, but the old man refused. He didn't force him, he just asked someone to prepare another suitable food for the old man. After eating, Hastur did not go upstairs, but went out for a walk around the manor alone. Before coming, Miss Sharon had told him that Merrick had already come to stay near the manor. Sure enough, when no one was around, Merrick emerged from the bushes. "TSK, they say your Campbell family has declined, but this large manor alone is enough to sell for a sky-high price." Merrick patted the grass clippings and leaves on his body and joked with a smile. According to his estimate, this large manor could be sold for tens of thousands of gold pounds at least. The location and environment here are very good, and the people living nearby are also big nobles, and even the royal family. It is a manor that even rich people may not be able to buy. Hastur smiled and replied, "The Duke Negan family is the real noble family, and they live in the castle. Although times have changed and technology has advanced, some things have remained. For example, the castles of the old era were the configuration of a truly great noble. Today's times are different. Most members of Duke Negan's family live in Queens and enjoy a convenient life. The symbolic significance of the castle to them is far greater than its residential function. Because this thing is usually built in the territory, a noble with a castle in his territory is equivalent to a king. That is the real great aristocracy, and the current Campbell family is still far from it." When it comes to Duke Negan's family, Merrick's expression also shudders. It is difficult for ordinary people or extraordinary people to wait calmly for this top powerful family. The other party may not have high-sequence experts at home, but they can invite powerful beyonders at any time if they want. In a place like Backlund, even if you really invite an angel, you might not be able to do it. Merrick sighed, "You nobles are so rich, no wonder the workers below are getting worse and worse. A year of hard work is not as much as the cost of your one-night banquet." This question is difficult for Hastur to answer. No matter which dynasty it is, as long as there are people enjoying life above, there will definitely be people working hard below. Isn't it just someone who rides on someone else's head? He is a nobleman, and will become a great nobleman. Faced with such harsh social structural problems, unless the tide of the times has arrived, it will be difficult for him to go to the opposite side of his own class. "Don't worry, I don't hate the rich and powerful that much. I just think your life is too good and makes people jealous." Merrick smiled and dropped the topic, turning to talk about what he had discovered in the depths of the jungle these past few days. The spiritual religion group, the Path of Death. The first instinct in Hastur's mind was the spiritual cult from the southern continent. The death path naturally restrains undead creatures such as living zombies. They don't need too high a sequence to easily take away the living zombie team that Merrick has carefully cultivated. Fortunately, Merrick didn't take any risks, otherwise he would have suffered a big loss. "Is it far from here?" Hastur asked the most critical question. "It's quite far away. It's relatively close to that Earl's manor. If something changes, they will be the ones who encounter the unexpected." "That's good." Hastur breathed a sigh of relief. There was no threat here for the time being, so he didn't need to deal with it in a hurry. After collecting conclusive evidence, just report it directly to the Church of the Night Goddess and ask them to send someone to solve it. "Don't you want to go and have a look? A noble should not put himself in danger," Hastur said seriously. "Is this what Emperor Russell said?" "Maybe." Hastur did not want to discuss Emperor Russell's famous sayings with Merrick, and instead asked if it was necessary to arrange a room for him in the manor. "No, I can't worry about my friends." Facing the unknown situation, Merrick did not dare to stay too far away from his living corpse. Hastur chatted with Merrick for a few more words and then returned to the manor. It was time for him to plan on living a savage life. "Tomorrow I will go into the mountains in the name of hunting, and then find an excuse to stay alone in the forest to camp. With Merrick nearby, safety should still be guaranteed. Late at night, Hastur entered the Palace of Stars on the newly made big bed. After testing the Mother Tree of Desire last time, he stopped this dangerous move. He always felt that the Mother Tree of Desire had already tied his pocket, waiting for him to get in. It is better to wait until he has formulated the second rule and then find an opportunity to test it. He also felt that he was too crazy for a Sequence 8 to dare to test an alien god like this. But he didn't dare to invite the Mother Tree of Desire to a meeting without testing it first, even if it was just a clone of his consciousness. After thinking for a while, Hastur focused on the second rule. During this period of time, he has determined the general content of the second rule, which is to allow himself to always be able to glimpse the most correct destiny in the chaotic and disorderly destiny as much as possible. What is the right destiny? The destiny that is most beneficial to you. Equivalent to when doing multiple choice questions, it can always choose the answer that meets its needs. Of course, the fate that is most beneficial to him is not necessarily the best fate. This requires him to use some language to avoid and modify it as much as possible. Finally he wrote down this rule. Under the gaze of the stars, Hastur Campbell, a traveler from another world, the last heir of the Campbell family. He is the darling of fate, and good luck always accompanies him throughout his life. He is the exception to fate, and will not be arranged by any existence. He is the wise man of fate, and can always glimpse in advance the fate that will have a major impact on him. This rule is fair and reasonable and will not change due to any external factors. When this rule about destiny was printed on the chain of order, the starlight in the Palace of Stars gathered like a sea and poured into the chain of order. As the light blue starlight lines spread, Hastur knew that the rule he had formulated had successfully taken effect. As the starlight patterns continued to be completed, the sea of starlight gradually dispersed, and the entire star palace seemed to be enveloped with an indescribable aura of destiny. Hastur quietly felt the changes in the Palace of Stars, and had a new understanding of the two words, stars, in his heart. Maybe the stars really do contain it all. A new rule: let yourself be involved in the path of destiny, and become the darling, exception, and wise man of destiny. So when you make your next rule, can you include the path of the sun and the path of the night? This is somewhat similar to the authority of a visionary, but not the same. Utopians transform illusion into reality through fantasy, similar to creating things out of thin air. This ability of the Palace of Stars is essentially an application of rules, but this kind of rules is more advanced and seems to include everything. To use a simple example, water is poisonous. The power of a visionary is to imagine poisonous water and replace non-toxic water, so that the truth that water is poisonous is accepted by people. The Hall of Stars directly formulates a rule that water is poisonous, and from then on non-toxic water becomes highly poisonous, and then everyone obeys and recognizes this rule. Similarly, some rules that contradict common sense can be formulated, such as, stones are soft, sugar is bitter, children are born by men. Asta quietly pondered all the possibilities about the Hall of Stars. Although these speculations are only based on his existing cognition, they may not be correct, and may even be completely wrong, but they can open his mind and clear a little bit of fog. While Asta was thinking, the second chain of order flew in front of Asta, and the top touched Asta's forehead. The familiar feeling surged again, making him groan. This time, it did not rush straight from the forehead to the back of the head, but merged into his eyes. He seemed to see that a chain of order merged into his eyes, and his eyes began to emit the same light as starlight. Is this going to form an eye that can spy on fate? Asta had some guesses in his mind. Among all the organs in the body, there is no doubt that the eyes are the most compatible with fate. When he was formulating the new rules just now, he also emphasized the ability to spy on fate. Only the eyes are suitable for carrying this change. Last time it was integrated into the spine, this time it was integrated into the eyes, and next time it will be integrated into which part of his body? If he formulates a rule related to the pharmacist path, wouldn't it be? Ahem, I can't think about it, I'm not that guy Greylint. Asta put away his thoughts and gradually adapted to this change. Soon, everything in the Hall of Stars returned to normal, and the second chain of order fell quietly on Asta's right side. Dong, dong, dong. Asta tapped the table with his fingers, looking at the star where the mother tree of desire was, with a thoughtful look. After thinking for a while, he decided to try it to see if he could spy on the corresponding fate. What kind of future will happen if the mother tree of desire is brought to the Hall of Stars for a meeting now? Asta silently repeated it 3 times in his heart, and then slowly closed his eyes. There was a large area of darkness in front of him, and then he fell into eternal silence, as if everything was forbidden at this moment. Suddenly, a picture flashed by at high speed, breaking the silence of the darkness. Hastur suddenly opened his eyes and felt a headache, as if his head was pierced by needles. This was a manifestation of a large consumption of spiritual power. If he were in the real world, his brain would definitely be blown up directly. It would cost enough to spy on fate. Being in the Hall of Stars, because of the role of the rules, he could be largely exempted from this kind of damage. After a short rest, Hastur recalled the picture he had just seen. Although it was just a quick glance, he still saw the general content of the picture. In the Hall of Stars, he sat with the Mother Tree of Desire and the God of Lamp to have a meeting. The God of Lamp sat at the end, and the Mother Tree of Desire sat at the nearest position to his left. The picture looked quite harmonious, but I didn't know if anything happened before and after. This was a painting that was equivalent to freezing a corner of future fate. I don't know the cause, I don't know the result. It can only be interpreted and thought by the people who see this painting. Asta thought about it carefully for a while and felt that this picture was a harmonious and friendly performance, representing a good future. No hurry, wait until the next time we call the lamp god for a meeting, we can test his reaction a little bit, or maybe we can directly pull the Mother Tree of Desire in front of him. Asta thought about various possibilities quietly, until the headache was too much to bear, and then he left the Hall of Stars. The next day, Asta went to the dense forest behind the manor to hunt and relax according to his original plan. As night fell, he proposed to camp in the dense forest with his friends, and asked Merrick to send 2 zombies to act as his camping partners, in order to dispel the concerns and worries of Butler Neal. Without outsiders present, Asta breathed a sigh of relief, and his expression was much more relaxed. Regardless of the elegant image of the nobles, he took off his coat, rolled up his sleeves, took off his shoes, rolled up his trouser legs, and prepared to go to the lake to catch a few fish to grill. Merrick came out from the depths of the jungle, saw this scene, was stunned, and joked, "You have been a noble for a while, do you want to be a savage for once? When you are in nature, you should liberate your mind and adapt to nature, so that you can experience the beauty of nature." Asta did not even turn his head, and grasped a wooden stick with a sharp head, and stabbed a big fish that was spitting bubbles. The force was full, the clear water was rippling, but it was a pity that the aim was a little off. Asta was not in a hurry, after searching for a while, he aimed at the next fish. Liberate your mind. You are obviously just playing around, right? Shoo, you scared my fish away again. It's obviously your own poor fishing skills. Tisk, if you can do it, come and stop talking. At this moment, Merrick felt that the elegant and noble image of Asta in his mind was completely shattered. At night, a bonfire was lit on the open space beside the lake. There were 7 or 8 small wooden sticks on the edge of the bonfire, with fish of different sizes skewered on them. Merrick glanced at the charred fish skewers in his hand, and glanced at Asta opposite. I always felt that this scene was a bit absurd and unreal. Asta Campbell, a young and handsome baron, the last heir of the Campbell family, should have been an aristocrat known for his elegance. But now, his behavior of fishing in the water and grilling fish on the fire is more skilled than the skills he has honed in his years of living in the open air. Is this his nature liberated from nature? Facing Merrick's scrutiny, Asta took a bite of the fish with a natural expression, frowned slightly and said, "It's a pity that there is no seasoning here." The fish was a bit fishy. It was definitely not because his grilling skills were too poor, but because there was no seasoning to enhance the taste. Speaking of which, he hadn't felt the taste of spiciness for a long time, and grilled fish was better when it was a little spicy. "Have you been suppressed for too long?" As Merrick spoke, he secretly threw the charred fish in his hand into the fire. "To be precise, I want to try something new. You nobles are really idle." "Yes, most nobles are idle. They don't need to consider material needs, so they have a lot of leisure time. Is this also the reason why you want to set foot in the extraordinary world?" Asta did not continue to discuss these worthless topics with Merrick, and soon led the topic to Miss Sharon. He was very interested in Miss Sharon's past life. He had heard Merrick's version of the adventure story, and wanted to hear Miss Sharon's version of the adventure. It's just that Miss Sharon is obviously not a person who likes to talk and introduce herself. "Sharon is different from me. She has been like this since she was a child. She is quiet and doesn't like to talk. She hates noise. Apart from liking beautiful skirts, it is difficult to find other girlish aspects in her. Her teacher is a very capable person. Sharon learns and grows very quickly. If it weren't for that accident, her life would be much more exciting and stable than it is now. She wouldn't have to risk coming to Backlund to live in seclusion. She has never complained about the hardships of life. No matter how the world changes or how dangerous it is, she always follows the principles she adheres to in her heart and moves forward all the way." Asta listened silently and asked curiously, "Didn't Miss Sharon do anything naughty or outrageous before?" "Of course, when she was a child." When Merrick came to the key point, he stopped in a hurry and coughed lightly, saying, "I was still young at that time, and I don't remember some things clearly." He felt that if he dared to reveal the embarrassing things Sharon did when she was a child in front of Hastur, he would definitely be beaten. "Marichi, sharing is a good quality. I'm sorry, my quality has always been at a low point. There are only two of us here, do we need to care about these things? Do I look stupid?" Ah. Seeing that he couldn't convince Marichi, Asta didn't ask any more questions. The two chatted for a while, and Marichi went back to stay with his zombie team. Asta flattened the grass and wanted to get a blanket to spread on it, but later gave up the idea. If you want to play a barbarian, you have to be thorough. You can't become a barbarian if you live a too civilized lifestyle. Late at night, a light mist came, and the whole air was a little chilly. Asta, who was lying in the open space near the campfire, woke up from his sleep and listened for a while. He did hear the whistle from Marichi's mouth. Are the people of the spiritual cult so idle? Do they come to this deep mountain forest to hold a dance party in the middle of the night every day? Or are they holding some ceremony, and it has reached a critical moment? Want to go and have a look together? Asta was interrupted by Merrick's sudden voice. He got up from the ground and looked at Merrick, who was walking with the zombie team. "Didn't you say that the whistle would cause the zombies to mutate? Don't worry, I will keep them away from here. Just you and I will go and have a look." "Okay, I'll go with you." Asta agreed to Merrick's invitation. He was also interested in what the spiritual cult was going to do. "I'll deal with it first. You wait here for me." Merrick led the zombie team away from here and tried to suppress the changes that might occur in them, and then came back to meet Asta. The two of them walked carefully along the source of the whistle in the moonlight. After walking for about 20 minutes, they saw a ball of fire from the depths of the dense forest. Even under the cover of the dense forest, the fire was very dazzling. If there was really a ceremony, it must be on a large scale. Asta and Merrick looked at each other and knew that they had to be more careful on the road ahead. The two of them pushed aside the branches and vines that blocked their way. Merrick walked in front, and Hastur followed behind, gradually approaching the source of the fire and the whistle. After walking a distance, Hastur and Merrick vaguely heard the sound coming from the fire. Words such as soul hell, Lord of the Dead, and happiness in the afterlife were mentioned many times. From this information, Hastur could be sure that the organization that was causing trouble tonight was definitely the spirit cult, but he couldn't tell which branch it was. Although the spiritual cult believes in death and the god of death, the true god who stands at the top of the path of the god of death, they are divided into several factions. There are the royal faction, the artificial god of death faction, the sleeping faction, the underworld faction and some other small factions. Each faction has different goals. The royal faction advocates supporting the descendants of the god of death and has extremely high power in the southern continent. The artificial god of death faction tries to activate the uniqueness and let the god of death return from the depths of the underworld. It is the most crazy and dangerous faction. The sleeping faction simply believes that after a person dies, the soul will remain in the world. Only by letting the soul rest can they be happy in the afterlife, and the existence that dominates whether the soul rests or not is the god of death. This faction is very calm and has good original intentions. It is the easiest to deal with. What it wants and does is more in line with the authority of the goddess of night. The underworld faction advocates summoning underworld creatures, which is similar to the branch of the summoning flow. Hastur doesn't know much about other factions. Continue. Marek gave Hastur a look. Be careful. Asta nodded, agreeing to continue to explore. The two tiptoed and carefully approached a distance. Through the gaps between the branches and leaves, you can vaguely see a group of people circling around the fire, dancing an uncoordinated sacrificial dance. Marichi looked solemn, while Asta looked relaxed. Even the sacrificial dance was so loose and uneven, it didn't look like the regular army of the spiritual cult at first glance, but more like an extra staff member of the spiritual cult. Should we leave first and report to the Church of the Night? Marichi lowered his voice and suggested. Asta looked at Marichi in surprise. Shouldn't he be good at this kind of behavior? Marichi, a member of a non-orthodox church, now has such a high level of awareness. The Church of the Night handles these extraordinary events more seriously. Marichi couldn't understand Asta's complicated eyes, and lowered his voice and said. Don't worry, let's wait and see. Asta said, motioning Marichi to continue to open the way forward. The two of them went a little deeper and were about 15 meters away from the blazing fire. They could already see the group of people dancing in circles by the light of the fire. There were elderly people, middle-aged people who were beginning to lose their hair, young people, children, men and women of all ages. The light of the fire reflected on their faces, and deep sadness was hidden under their calm and pious expressions. After dancing, some people could no longer control their sadness and sobbed softly, while others blew brass whistles and sobbed, causing the temperature around them to drop again. Could they have summoned some spiritual creatures? How about turning on the spiritual vision? While Asta was thinking, Marek on the side had already turned on the spiritual vision. From his not-so-good-looking face, it can be seen that he must have seen incredible spiritual creatures. Is there any danger? Not yet. Marek gave his own judgment. Asta put aside his worries, gently rubbed his fingers, and turned on the spiritual vision. The first thing that came into view was a huge, bloated spirit creature. It looked like a toad, but it had no limbs and could only lie on the ground. Its head was very big. Compared to it, the bonfire was only a small flame. The group of people dancing in circles were not enough for it to swallow. It looked very quiet, and only when the whistle sounded did it have a slight change in expression. In addition to this largest toad-shaped spirit creature, there were several spirit creatures that were a few sizes smaller. They opened their eyes and stared at the brass whistles, whimpering and urging from time to time. Could these be spirit messengers summoned by the brass whistle? Could it be that there was not even one person in this group who could see with the spirit? Asta was puzzled, but felt that it was not that simple. That toad-shaped spirit creature was too big, and its performance proved that it had a high level of intelligence. It should not be a messenger, but a spirit creature that had signed a contract with a person. Which messenger would make such a big mess? It takes a long time to deliver the message. Could this be the preaching site of the spiritual cult? As soon as the thought came to Asta's mind, he heard a middle-aged man in formal clothes and noble clothes at the campfire in front of him, smiling and saying in the direction of him and Marek. "Two friends from afar, do you want to dance together? We have been discovered. There are indeed extraordinary people here." Asta confirmed his guess and looked at the big toad with a little more vigilance. Marek showed a ferocious look, glanced at Asta, and said in a low voice, "Do you want to go up and deal with him? Negotiate first. The other party has not shown any malicious intent." Asta pulled Marek's arm, signaling him to calm down and not act impulsively. "We just happened to pass by and were attracted by the movement here." Asta led Marek out of the dense forest, attracting a curious look. Their expressions were very calm, and they were not panicked at all when their secrets were discovered. The middle-aged man smiled and said, "Those who can come here are all the favorites of the Lord." "Lord?" Asta deliberately showed a look of curiosity and interest. The middle-aged man smiled more brilliantly, and said softly, "We believe in the Master who controls the destination of all death. He is the Lord of the dead, the Lord of darkness, and the loving Father who grants the living a peaceful sleep. Are you all his believers? We believe that only when the dead souls fall into a deep sleep after death can they obtain happiness in the afterlife. We are followers of his will. What are you doing?" Asta pointed to the people dancing around the bonfire. "Although the Lord does not care about our gratitude, we still need to use dance to please the Lord to show our piety and joy." Asta nodded and smiled, "Then you continue, we will leave first." The smile on the middle-aged man's face froze slightly, and then he smiled again, "My manor is not far from here. You can go there to stay for one night. For those who need help, we are always willing to provide help within our capacity. The owner of the manor not far away, is this the Earl Richard? Thank you for your kindness, we came out to camp in the wild on purpose." Asta still declined and turned to leave. He was just testing, not really wanting to leave at this time. If this Earl Richard chose to take action, then it can be confirmed that they were not good people. If he did not take action, then he could continue to chat with them. There are many wild beasts here. The two friends should be more careful when camping outside. If you need help, you can come here to find us. The middle-aged man smiled kindly and did not talk to Asta anymore. Instead, he walked into the crowd and led the crowd to start a new round of sacrificial dance. His dance was obviously far beyond the average level of this group of people. It can be basically confirmed that he is the organizer of this event. Other believers also joined the dance team, leaving only Asta and Marek standing outside the circle. "Do you want to try the dance here?" Asta suggested with a smile. Marek was surprised, "Aren't you always cautious? Why are you so reckless now? Life needs to indulge occasionally. You can't be convinced by his few words. I'll try it first, you stay here." Marek watched Asta join the dance team. The middle-aged man was very happy to see Asta return, and personally taught Asta how to dance this sacrificial dance well. Asta learned very quickly, which made the middle-aged man more optimistic about him and kept praising his talent. Soon, Asta was proficient in dancing this sacrificial dance and naturally integrated into this group. Only Marek, who stayed outside, seemed out of place, attracting many curious and puzzled eyes. After the dance, Asta got rid of the conversation with Earl Richard, returned to Marek, and shared the information he had found with him. After the integration and trickery just now, he had confirmed that the middle-aged man was Earl Richard, and his full name was Dylan Richard. During this period, they would come here every night to dance and pray for blessings, asking the Lord of the Dead who dominated the world of the dead to let the souls of their relatives rest in peace, so that they could get better happiness in the afterlife. This concept is very similar to the Buddhist teachings that Asta is familiar with, both of which believe in the saying of blessings in the afterlife. In order to please the Lord of the Dead, they have to perform the sacrificial dance for 13 consecutive days. Now there are only 2 days left until the 13th day. You seem to have changed a lot. Merrick looked at Asta in circles. What he cared about was not that Asta could easily find out information, but the temperament and personality that Asta showed. Looking carefully again, Asta's original childishness and immaturity between his eyebrows seemed to have faded a lot, becoming mature and reliable. People always change themselves according to different occasions. There is no one who remains unchanged. That's right. Merrick nodded, and did not dwell on this issue anymore. He asked softly, "You don't really want to dance with them in the middle of the night, do you? Aren't you curious at all?" "Curious? I don't think I've lived enough. I would rather pretend that nothing happened tonight." Asta pondered for a while, and said with emotion, "Merrick, you have successfully changed my stereotype of you. I find that you are getting more and more worthy of a beating now." Merrick's mouth twitched. Hastur smiled and didn't say anything more. The reason why he wanted to know what these people wanted to do was because Earl Richard was too close to his manor. If he is just a member of the sleeping sect of the spiritual cult, then it would be useless even if he reported it to the Church of the Goddess of Night. Sleeping is also the authority of the Goddess of Night. Her full name is, Goddess of Night, who is higher than the stars and longer than eternity, the Mother of Secrets, the Queen of Disaster and Fear, the Lord of Sleep and Silence. Perhaps the people of the spiritual cult do not know that the one who holds the authority of sleeping is not only the god of death, but also the goddess of night. And after the conversation just now, he found that although this Earl Richard is enthusiastic about preaching, he has a good character. Many people here have been helped by Earl Richard. He not only provides help within his ability, but also comforts their sad hearts due to the death of their loved ones. Merrick advised earnestly, "I know you yearn for the mysterious extraordinary world, but this world is very dangerous and far from as simple as what you see with your eyes. For example, now, you don't really think that what you see with your eyes is the whole picture here, right?" Asta showed an interested look. Merrick hesitated for a moment, then lowered his voice and said, "There is a huge spiritual creature here, it is overlooking all of us." "Spiritual creature? Where? Why can't I see it?" Asta showed his nervousness, excitement, and curiosity at the right time. "You haven't become an extraordinary person yet, you can't open your spiritual vision, and you can't see creatures from the spiritual world. What a pity." Asta sighed regretfully. "It's hard for me to judge whether the spiritual creature is good or evil, it's better to stay away from it." "You are right, but this Earl Richard is my neighbor next door, and we will meet again sooner or later." Merrick was silent for a while, and still felt that it was safest and easier to report directly to the Church of the Night. At this time, Count Richard came over again, enthusiastically conveyed his philosophy to Asta, and invited Asta to join them. "I don't have anything sad now." Asta refused at first, and then said, "I agree that only by letting the dead souls rest in peace can they be happy in the afterlife." Count Richard understood the meaning of his words and invited, "Tomorrow night and the night after tomorrow, we will still be nearby. If you are interested, you can come and see." "We will definitely come." After receiving a positive answer, Count Richard became more hospitable and enthusiastic, and repeatedly invited Asta and Merrick to his manor to play for 2 days. Asta smiled and refused this invitation to go directly to the old nest. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning when all the excitement gradually calmed down. Count Richard organized people to put out the bonfire with mud and clean up the traces of the activities. Asta asked curiously, and Count Richard told them that the Lord they believed in liked the tranquility after the excitement. After the sacrificial dance, as his believers, they should not disturb his peace. Soon, the sky was bright, and Earl Richard led his people away from here. The huge toad-shaped spiritual creature also disappeared after the bonfire went out. Asta and Merrick, who stayed in the same place, looked at each other and couldn't help but sigh at the wonder of last night. They look quite normal, if there was no spiritual creature. Merrick gave his evaluation. He is an earl. If he really wanted to hold an evil ritual, I'm afraid he would have attracted the attention of the church long ago. I hope so. Merrick nodded. Seeing that Asta looked energetic, he asked curiously, "You didn't sleep all night, aren't you tired at all?" "I'm too excited." Back near the lake, Asta pretended to be very tired and proposed to go back to the manor to rest first, so that he would have the energy to attend the party in the evening. Merrick went to check his zombie team to see if there was any accident. At Astor Manor, Butler Neil saw Asta covered with leaves and grass debris, and his expression was very complicated. What's fun about camping in the wild? In such a dense forest, there are a lot of mosquitoes, snakes and rats, and you can't sleep well at night. Where can you sleep comfortably in a big bed at home? He didn't interfere too much, just thinking that Asta was still young and liked to seek excitement. At night, Asta again proposed to camp in the wild, and then he and Merrick played cards for 2 hours around the lake, burning a bonfire. During the period, a zombie joined, making up 3 people, and played a few games of fighting evil. But the zombies have limited IQ. Faced with this more advanced gameplay, they obviously can't keep up with intelligence. They can't distinguish teammates from enemies. If there is a bomb, they throw it. Whatever card is bigger, it will be played. At about 12 o'clock in the night, the surrounding temperature dropped, and a faint whistle sounded again in the depths of the dense forest. Asta and Merrick finished the card game and followed the source of the whistle. Finally, they found Earl Richard and his group who had prepared a bonfire. Their number was about the same as last night, all more than a dozen. Seeing Asta appear as promised, Earl Richard greeted him happily. After a few pleasantries, Hastur asked curiously, "Why is the ceremony being held in a different place tonight than it was last night?" "The sacrificial site that has been used once is no longer clean. The Lord likes cleanliness and hates dirtiness. He is the master who leads to rest. A clean and refreshing environment is suitable for his kingdom on earth." Earl Richard introduced it with piety. Merrick nodded without doubt, and Asta secretly paid attention. This time, Asta and Merrick came earlier and just caught up with their complete sacrificial session. At the beginning, they sat cross-legged on one side of the campfire, closed their eyes and chanted songs praising the Lord. The dead souls wandering in the world, with nowhere to rest. We need guidance, we need salvation, and we need the Lord's gift. Lord, the Lord of rest in the land of the dead. Please cast your compassionate eyes and bless us to lead us forward. Earl Richard finished the first session after chanting the song 10 times. The second session was the summoning ceremony, which was hosted and completed by Earl Richard alone. Surrounded by the crowd, he drew a mysterious and complex rune on the ground with a pious look, with several curves, 3 circles, and 4 straight lines. Asta stepped forward to observe it, his mouth twitched slightly, and he retreated to the side with all his strength. This is not a summoning rune at all, it is clearly an ordinary pattern that Count Richard saw from somewhere and drew casually, it just looks bluffing. Count Richard then took out 3 candles that had been prepared long ago, the black candle was placed in the upper left corner, the red candle was placed in the upper right corner, and the last ordinary candle was placed in the center. This scene surprised Asta. The rune that was nothing just now made him think that Count Richard's knowledge of mysticism was very poor, but the placement of these 3 candles did meet the needs of ritual magic. When he saw Count Richard take out plants such as rotten body grass, corpse flower, night herb, deep sleep flower, etc., and placed them respectfully and neatly, he was inexplicably shocked. He was now certain that Earl Richard must have mixed the god of death and the goddess of night together to form what he thought was the Lord of the Dead. Plants with a strong smell of death, such as the rotten body grass and the corpse flower, were favored by the god of death. Night vanilla and deep sleep flower were the favorites of the goddess of night. Before he finished, Earl Richard carefully took out a fist-sized crystal ball from his arms and placed it in the center of the 3 candles. After preparing all this, Earl Richard began to chant the spell devoutly. I summon in my name. The spirit entrenched in the depths of the void, the mysterious creature that likes the night and tranquility, the messenger who wanders between the world of the living and the dead. When Earl Richard finished chanting the spell in ancient Hermes, a strong wind blew up in the void, gloomy and cold, and the swaying candlelight was stained with a deep blue light. The huge toad-like spiritual creature last night appeared again, coiled up, and overlooked Earl Richard and others below. Richard stood up and bowed respectfully to the location of the spirit creature. 5 of the participants who were gathered in a circle outside took out brass whistles and blew them. Soon, 5 smaller spirit creatures appeared. The temperature around dropped again, and a gust of wind came, making people feel cold all over. The ceremony is over. After completing these, Earl Richard was very happy, and the participants around him also praised the Lord's gaze from the dead world to the world. Merrick was also well informed, but he was still shocked by this scene. A ritual magic messed up, but it was still successful in the end. He really wanted to know how this Earl Richard and this huge spirit creature lived in harmony for so long. There was no contract, but he could summon it successfully every time, and he hadn't encountered any accidents. Isn't this luck too good? And 5 brass whistles can actually summon 5 spirit creatures. Could it be a seal? No, if it is a seal, the negative effects alone are not something that these ordinary people can bear. Asta was also shocked by Earl Richard's operation. What a talent! The third part was to dance around the bonfire to please the gods. Merrick still did not join in. Asta took the initiative to join the dance team without waiting for Earl Richard to invite him, which made Earl Richard very satisfied. There were 3 rounds of this sacrificial dance, and each round had its own symbolic meaning. The first round of sacrificial dance was to please the gods, let the gods listen to their tiny wishes, and satisfy their wishes. The second round of sacrificial dance was for their dead relatives, hoping that dance could make their souls rest in peace. The third round of sacrificial dance was for themselves. The dead souls needed to rest in peace, and the people who were still alive in the world still needed to move forward. They needed courage, blessings, and the luck to complete their lives. After the 3 rounds of sacrificial dance, Asta and the people around him began to discuss the deeds of the god, the Lord of the Dead, and their respective sad stories. At 3 o'clock in the morning, the grand and mysterious ceremony ended again, and Count Richard sincerely invited Asta and Merrick to visit his manor again. If I can witness a miracle tomorrow night, I think I should change my faith. Asta did not say it completely, but just gave Count Richard a signal that he might join. Yes, the Lord will show miracles and give equal blessings to every believer. Count Richard was very happy to lead his team away. Before leaving, they still put out the bonfire and cleaned up the scene. It's unimaginable, unbelievable, that he can survive until now. With no outsiders present, Merrick let out a series of sighs. Asta hid his smile and asked puzzledly, "Is there any problem?" Of course there is a problem. The problem is huge. Could it be that Earl Richard is parasitized by some evil god or demon? Merrick waved his hand and said, "It's not that serious. He, how should I put it, is a lucky guy. The main problem does not come from him, but from the huge spiritual world creature." Hastur showed an expression of humbly asking for advice, and Merrick took 2 steps back and forth. There are indeed friendly creatures in the spiritual world, but the ritual magic that Earl Richard just performed did not specifically mention friendliness and harmlessness. And other words. A spirit that dwells in the depths of the void, a mysterious creature that likes darkness and tranquility, a messenger that travels between the world of the living and the dead. Spiritual creatures that fit this description do exist, but they are not necessarily friendly. They are more likely to be evil, terrifying creatures with hidden evil intentions. Especially the one about messengers who travel between the living world and the world of the dead. I have never heard of any friendly creatures coming out of the world of the dead. You should understand the ancient Hermetic language, right? Hastur said modestly, I can understand part of it. Then you have to study harder. If you want to enter the extraordinary world, ancient Hermes is a very important mystical language. If you have the ability, you must also master such mystical languages as elf and giant. It's hard to find the right teachers. Hastur sighed slightly. Although he knew some giant and elvish languages, they were limited to a few and difficult to master. It was really difficult to find a suitable teacher for these two languages. Merrick thought for a while, Sharon is very good at learning this kind of knowledge, much better than me. If she is willing to be your teacher. With her personality, she won't just become someone else's teacher. You'd better go to Backlund University and find those old professors who specialize in languages. Merrick felt that it was very unreliable to ask Sharon to teach the occult language. Based on her temperament, she would probably throw the relevant books directly in front of Hastur and let him study on his own. Hastur also felt that with Sharon's character, she wouldn't be his teacher, which was a bit of a pity. Do you think Earl Richard should be an extraordinary of what order? Hastur changed the topic. It will definitely not exceed sequence 5. I estimate that he should be around sequence 7. Sequence 7, a psychic on the path of death. This is quite similar to the ability shown by Earl Richard. He is so lucky that a person like him who is not very proficient in mystical knowledge can be successfully promoted to sequence 7 without losing control. The two of them chatted all the way back to the lake. When parting, Hastur specifically guided them, you said that Earl Richard and the others have to change places every time they hold a ceremony. Is there any special reason? Merrick thought for a long time and said, tomorrow, let's go investigate together. The next day, Asta and Merrick started searching along the nearby dense forest, and soon found the third and fourth places where ceremonies had been held. Have you noticed that these 4 ritual sites seem to be around a circle? Hastur guessed. Do you think the 13th ceremony will be at the center of the location of the previous 12 ceremonies? Merrick's face became more solemn. The two of them followed this line of thinking and searched in circles, and sure enough they found the 5th, 6th, and 12th ceremony location. Connecting these 12 points, it does look like a circle, and the distance between the 2 points is almost the same. This can already show that Earl Richard and his party did not choose the ceremony location randomly, but had already decided on 13 ceremony locations at the very beginning of the ceremony. According to the order in which they performed the ceremony, it should go in a counterclockwise direction. Hastur's expression also became serious. In occultism, counterclockwise and clockwise are also important. For example, in tarot cards, there is a difference between upright and reverse. If clockwise represents the passage of time, from the past to the future, then counterclockwise represents the exact opposite. It can be understood as going back in time, from the present to the past. The idea pursued by Earl Richard and his party is to put the dead souls to rest, and then reincarnate the souls after death, from death to rebirth. This should mean clockwise, because time flows normally. On the contrary, counterclockwise represents the pursuit of resurrection from the dead. This is completely contrary to the philosophy pursued by Earl Richard and others, and is extremely dangerous. He is now a little suspicious that Earl Richard may not understand the occult meaning of this at all, and his actions are guided by external forces. For example, the huge spiritual creature that cannot see the depth clearly. According to Earl Richard's description, it is a messenger walking between the world of the living and the dead. So wanting to escape from the undead world and appear in this world should be its very reasonable pursuit, right? This can also explain why Earl Richard can accurately summon it every time and is always safe with the opponent. Because Earl Richard still has enough use value.